holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
Looking for wine with a reindeer-inspired name for your Secret Santa? You've come to the right place.
The sweetness of a maple-glazed ham paired with a bourbon barrel-aged Cabernet. Uh-oh. We went there, and now my taste buds are hopping.
I can help you impress the boss with a great bottle of wine. Here's to a raise in 2019.
As you check off that gift list this holiday season, we'd love to share our always low prices and ridiculous selection at Total Wine & More. Cheers.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL. Football. Yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast, one that I know my Purple Podcast co-host, former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels, is very excited to do. Sage, I got a bunch of tweets yesterday about you telling everyone for weeks what the Vikings offense would look like without John DeFilippo, and Kevin Stefanski read off your script in the first quarter with 3 touchdowns yesterday. Give me your reactions to the Vikings offense.
Well, I think you and I both, in different ways, probably me more visually just looking at, how their plays are called and how their game plan looks and when they're in shotgun, when they're in center, and you statistically all the analysis that you do, which is incredible. I think that we were just seeing these patterns over time and really probably going back to early in the season, almost even maybe preseason, of what type this offense is. And I remember early in the year, first couple weeks, thinking to myself, this doesn't feel like that Philadelphia Eagles offense that I just saw win the Super Bowl, yet it was supposed to be something like that. So, as you and I and everyone else has been studying not only the offense, but its quarterback, the players around it, the weapons, as we break down all positions, positives, negatives, the offensive line, it seemed like to us what we were witnessing was not sort of a style that was conducive to success. Maybe conducive to putting up yards and having a good quarterback rating or breaking wide receiver records. But all that really matters is wins and losses in the NFL. And the style that we were seeing didn't feel like it was helping out this football team. And, we weren't sure how Kevin Stefanski was going to call a play or design a play yesterday. He'd never done it before, never called an NFL, never called a play before. High school, college, pro football, never actually been the guy who called the play and fully designed a game plan. I don't know if he's reading our stuff or listening to our podcast. I highly doubt it. But, in the press conferences, I believe it was on Friday, they had the coordinators do the press conference and he used the phrase complementary football 2 or 3 times. And to me, that meant we're going to sort of grind it out, ground and pound, run the football more, play more conservatively, complement our very good defense, complement our special teams, which are usually pretty good. We're going to play complementary football, not rack up crazy numbers. And that's what they played yesterday. Kirk Cousins, 21 total passes. We're going to break it down, you and I, in the next day or two for a Wednesday podcast of how many of those were dropbacks, how many of those were bootleg and play action, how many of those were screens, what were the results, how many were in shotgun, all these different things. What were the results? Because they didn't have a huge statistical day yesterday. Kirk only throws for 215 yards, but also only has 21 attempts. That's I'm no mathematician, but that's about 10 yards an attempt. That's not terrible. And obviously the turnover hurt, but, running the football, that was huge. You and I had both, thought that running the football with Dalvin Cook, just giving him more opportunities. They're not always great, but just giving him more opportunities. And sure enough, he'd break a couple long ones and he did that yesterday. So, I think we were pretty spot on, and we're not always going to be. We're going to miss a lot of times or what our judgment and what we think the Vikings should do. But in this situation, it feels like at least through one week, that our analysis was pretty spot on over the last couple of months.
So I want to read you something from Mike Zimmer yesterday in his post-game press conference. The question was, how do you feel about the overall running game? They went over 200 yards, of course, and his answer was, we were hitting 5 or 6 yards a carry, and Cook is a pretty talented player, and when he's got the ball in his hands, typically good things happen. And Sage, I think that Mike Zimmer talking about the run game was not only about having a successful run game to set up play action and those sorts of things, but it was also Dalvin Cook shouldn't carry the ball 9 times in a game that's close. He should be carrying it all the time because he's amazing at football. And I think that was maybe the most frustrating thing for Zimmer as we went along was they're just not giving the ball enough to a guy who is incredibly good and can make a special play even when something isn't there.
Well, I think a player like a running back, and what makes a running back different than a wide receiver is that an offensive team can decide to give the ball to the running back. It actually can't decide to throw the ball to a wide receiver because he could be covered, right? So defenses can, in a way, take away a wide receiver much easier than taking away a running back. You can just hand the ball off to him. And, as I said, his runs aren't always huge. There's a lot of 0s and 1s and 2s in there. But when the guy does, say, break it outside and gets past that leverage of, a cornerback or a safety that loses contain, he is so good about getting around that edge. And next thing you know, just like you saw on the screen yesterday, on the second play of the game, 27 yards. Didn't feel like it. Feel like a 15-yard screen, but he's so fast, and he gets around that corner. He picks up some really big gains, and that's a guy you just want to get him a lot of touches, whether it's hand the ball off, screens, whatever it might be. He just needs a lot of touches. He should be getting the ball 20 times a game in one way or another.
And I had this stat on Twitter this morning in terms of the usage of some of the people that could help Dalvin Cook out in the running game, the big men. C.J. Ham, 18 snaps, his highest since week 4, and he hadn't gotten to double digits in the last 5 weeks, which is baffling to me since he's a good player. Tyler Conklin, the number 3 tight end, 23 snaps. David Morgan, 23 snaps. And Laquan Treadwell, not a great player, only 22 snaps. So it was pretty clear that Stefanski wanted to get the more talented guys, the bigger guys, and the blockers out there and not so much run 3 wide receivers all the time. And I think that helped Dalvin Cook quite a bit. And then it also forces the other team to put in their bigger personnel. And when you have 2 really great wide receivers and a great receiving running back, and the other team's got 3 linebackers on the field, it's just common sense that works. That's a Kyle Shanahan thing that they do all the time, using that extra tight end or that fullback.
Well, when you are in what they call regular personnel, 2 receivers, tight end, 2 running backs, just your standard, typical, some teams call it 21 personnel, because you have 2 running backs and a tight end. All right. So, regular personnel, that there's only really a base defense that teams have. Now, teams have a lot of different coverages to base defense. When you go 2 tight ends and 2 running backs and 1 receiver, also known as 22 personnel, all right, there's only so many defenses that defensive coordinators call. Mm-hmm. All those 3-man fronts with guys, those all disappear. All right, that is a run-first style of defense. So, or offense. So usually defenses only have really, maybe 3 coverages, man-to-man, maybe some sort of cover 3 and some sort of cover 2. So that's pretty much it. They might have a 5-man pressure or something like that, but they don't spend all this time designing all these exotic defenses, against that type of offense, because teams don't run it a ton. So when you game plan with that style, yeah, you're taking some weapons out of the game, but you also know what you're getting defensively. You can work on those pass blocking schemes, during the week, because you only know you're going to get 1 to 2 fronts. It's not going to be too confusing. Your guys should know what they're doing, and it really simplifies the game plan. And yesterday, yeah, as we saw, a lot of 2 tight ends, 2 running backs. C.J. Ham played a lot. I wrote in the Athletic on last week that I would walk down to C.J. Ham's locker and say, hey, you better tighten up that chin strap. You're going to play a lot. And Sure enough, Kevin Stefanski had the big guys in the game. And sure enough, it came up with a fairly dominating running performance. And with that, the play action bootleg game.
And there's another point there that you lead me into perfectly, is that Kirk Cousins was well protected yesterday. He was not taking a bunch of shots as soon as he released the ball. One of the sacks, Quinn got him by the foot and he just went down. But it wasn't like he was taking big hits. And this has been sort of a point of contention over the year is Kirk Cousins not playing as well because of the bad offensive line? But I think the offensive line has enough talent to hold up if they are given a hand. And I thought yesterday they were perfectly given help by moving Cousins around and by getting those big people in the game.
Yeah, again, a good coordinator understands what he has, the pieces of the pie that he has, and then try to minimize those weaknesses. And the offensive line has some good players, and they have some players that aren't great. That's just the way that's every offensive line. But how can you maximize their strengths, minimize their weaknesses? And to me, on this offense, drop back pass, shotgun, 5 and 7 step, stand there in the pocket. That's sort of the weakness of really everybody as far as quarterback and offensive line is concerned. That's where trouble seems to happen. That's usually where sacks happen. One was on a shotgun play and one was on a play action yesterday. But bad things usually don't happen, on the bootleg game, a good play action, type of deal. A lot of times, you have extra guys blocking. The defense has to play the run for a second. You get the quarterback on the pocket on the bootlegs. Those are pass plays too, and it minimizes, your left guard or your right guard or whoever, left tackle, trying to block a superior athlete for 4 seconds. When you ask those guys to do that, that's really hard. Some teams have better pass blocking O-linemen than others, and these guys sometimes struggle with that. The quarterback's not mobile enough to make them look great, Deshaun Watson's offensive line's not great either, but he's Deshaun Watson. The dude's such a good athlete, he makes them look better than they actually are. This team, the quarterback's not that way, so let's minimize those weaknesses. Let's move the quarterback, let's bootleg, let's play action, let's 3-step, let's screen on the second play of the game, slow down that pass rush. It really was a nice game plan by Kevin Stefanski.
And you mentioned last week, I think you asked me, how many times can I remember Kirk Cousins throwing to someone who was wide open and you couldn't even figure out why? Like, oh my gosh, there's no one around this guy. And it actually happened a couple times yesterday. One catch was by Tyler Conklin where he's just standing there wide open. There was another one to Adam Thielen, which I think didn't go down as a catch, but he was there wide open too. Kirk Cousins' performance yesterday, he throws the pick six. We'll talk about that. But outside of it, he was not asked to carry the entire team, maybe for the first time all year.
Hey, you remember when the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl a couple years ago and they had this really good defense? They had a pretty good running game. They had a quarterback who couldn't throw the ball 30 yards.
Yes.
Right? But
yes.
He was smart and, this, that, and the other, and he managed the game and they won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. Why can't the Vikings do that? Listen, this is just the way it's going to be. The quarterback is not going to carry this football team. And maybe in the off season they go out and get a whole bunch of really good offensive linemen and they can drop back and they can drop back in the pocket and they can put sort of more on Kirk's plate. But asking him to do a lot on a team that doesn't pass block great and have him run around and be the focal point of the offense, I think it's a bad way to go. I think the team understands that. Make him a part of this offense, not the entire thing, a part of the machine. Not the main motor, and just have him go out there and do his job. And, that's okay. You can win football games like that. You watch the Baltimore Ravens, they have a chance to make the playoffs. Their quarterback had, he has like 14, 18, 20 carries, it seems like every game. They're winning a different style of football. And it's sure as heck ain't throwing the football from the pocket. They're grinding it out in different ways, and they have a good chance of making the playoffs. And I think the Vikings are trying to find their, sort of game plans and strategy that maximizes their pluses and minimizes their negatives.
And is it just me, or when we were talking about all the offensive explosions earlier in the year, that most of that has gone away? I haven't seen anybody. There was that Rams-Chiefs game where they put up 50 points each, but since then, it seems like football has kind of gone back to being football. Like, that they haven't put up crazy numbers, and there were some teams that put up almost nothing yesterday offensively, and I'm not surprised by this, that the league would sort of come back to life and where it was, and they were letting the corners be physical in yesterday's game. And as far as the Vikings having any chance once you get to the playoffs, I don't think they have to be the team that scores 50 points, as long as they're holding on to the ball and possessing the ball and not giving it up and then playing the defense that they could play.
Hey, they scored 41 yesterday. You know, when you have a good defense, sometimes they can score a lot of points too. They get opportunities, they can score points too. So yeah, you know, November, December, January football, those 52, 48 games sort of disappear. You had a 17-16 the other day, Denver, Cleveland. You had a 13-14 Buffalo, Detroit. You had 24-17 with Chicago. The Colts and the Cowboys 23-0 yesterday. You know, you had some low scoring games. Washington, Jacksonville 16-13. Tennessee Giants 17-0. Pittsburgh, New England 17-10, right? A lot of games there with just the teams winning football games. So, you know, if the Vikings can score, you know, 21, 24 points, not turn the ball over, you got to feel really good about that.
Okay, what was your take on the Cousins pick six? Because I just filed it under the category of very typical for Kirk Cousins, who now has 10 pick sixes in 4 years as a starter, basically.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Well, I think, yeah, a couple of things with that. One, it looked like to me it was sort of a Sam or a nickel Sam blitz, maybe a strong safety blitz. I believe that was like a nickel Sam player. And he basically sort of ran into the interception. Now, at the end of the day, the quarterback is responsible for the football. All right. He's responsible for when it leaves his hand to where it's going. So it was sort of an unlucky play, but also as a quarterback, you have to always be prepared for sort of a worst case scenario. You know, when you're walking up the ball, all these checklists go off in your mind. What happens if they bring the safety? What happens if they bring the Sam linebacker? What happens if they're in a double A gap? What am I going to do? I have a run play on. What happens if the safety's down to that side? Do we have an answer for that? Are we going to have the safety or the receiver come in? Can I audible to a pass, or can we run the other way? You have to have all these, you know, answers of what if this happens. And on that play, your biggest nightmare is somebody basically sprinting at the snap to the wide receiver or somewhere in between you and the wide receiver and picking you off. That's worst case scenario. As a quarterback, you have to protect yourself against that. And Cousins just sort of threw it blindly. And you have to, again, you know, thinking worst case scenario. And obviously, you know, he didn't do that very well on that play.
And so this would be the concern as they go down the stretch here. And as of us talking at this moment, because of what happened last night, the Vikings are still only just a shade above 50% for being a lock for the playoffs because of what happened in Philadelphia last night. So they've still got to beat Detroit, who's played better on defense lately, although, you know, you and I could play good defense against the Bills. But they did a decent job against the Rams, so it's not a complete, like, obvious they're going to steamroll them or whatever. The thing that is always the concern with Cousins is that play. Is you're doing fine, you're rolling, you're on the other side of the field, and then something really, really bad happens. And Sage, I think this is him. I don't think there's any real answer for that. And it was always Mike Zimmer's fear with Case Keenum that he was going to do something crazy and it would turn into a pick six or something. And that happened. He didn't do anything crazy, but the pick six happened in the NFC Championship. And it's always going to be the fear every week that Kirk Cousins suits up. You almost have to factor in for one bad fumble, one strip sack, one interception that goes for touchdown or something with him. And yesterday was an example of they had to have a lot of things go right to overcome that with a great defensive performance and, you know, a great running game from Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray.
Well, listen, as I said, we're talking about this. Teams win Super Bowls without having great quarterback play. And, you know, the all-time is the Ravens, of course, one of the best defenses in NFL history. But just enough quarterback play to sort of not screw it up. And I think Cousins can do a heck of a lot more than that, than what Dilfer had to do, what I believe was back in 99 or 2000. But at the end of the day, again, it's about minimizing those negatives. And so not throwing the ball 45 times, not having him in the pocket where whether it's he gets pressure and interception occurs, or he gets sacked, or he fumbles, or he tries to make something happen and because the pocket breaks down and then again bad things happen. You just minimize those and count on the accurate passing on the bootleg game like yesterday. Count on giving the ball to a stud running back, which the Vikings do have. You maximize those other things and figure out what is Kirk Cousins really good at? What is his specialty? He's such a smart guy. Could you do a little bit more empty sometimes, but it's all 3-step and you just get the ball out. And that's just the way it's going to be. But he's smart at diagnosing and getting the ball out accurately, find those things that Kirk is good at. And I think this team could win, these last 2 games. That game, what was it? The game last night, the Rams game, that makes week 17 totally different. If the Rams won out and the Saints won out, at least won these next 2 weeks, the Bears would have had nothing to play for on that week 17 game with the Vikings. And so I was thinking, all right, they might have to play each other in the first round of the playoffs. Vikings may have a chance to, play this game. They pull out Trubisky. They pull out Mack. They pull out all their best players. They play their backups. They got nothing to play for. That would be obviously great for the Vikings to have that, maybe an easier win. Now it looks like, as far as I can tell, the Bears have a chance at being that number 2 seed. And so that week 17 might mean a lot to them. And they might play the best players now. So, we'll see what happens these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, the domino effect of some of these things is always fun to watch. I mean, last night, the Rams couldn't get it done against the Eagles. They fumble a punt at the end. They mismanage the clock at the end and still almost had a chance to pull it off and weren't able to do it. And all of a sudden, that took the Vikings' chances of making the playoffs from like 80% down to about a 50-50 split at this point. So they are going to have to win these last couple of games. Let me ask you this. So if there was anything else, we checked off all the boxes of things that we talked about. Use the fullback more, use the bootlegs more, give the ball to Dalvin Cook. He's good at football, all those things. What's the one other thing on offense over these next 2 weeks they need to do to beat Detroit, and especially if it's a real game against Chicago? So beating a good team, because that Dolphins team is abysmal.
And I think Detroit isn't great either. Listen, that Dolphins team beat the Patriots. All right, they beat them just a week early. Now it was a fluke play at the end, but either way, they were in the game, very close game, right down to the wire, though. So they're not a terrible football team. They looked like it yesterday. So the Vikings, sometimes they can really put it together. You stay away from turnovers. You get, a couple plays here on defense. And they're one of those teams that can beat anybody, but also seems like one of those teams that can lose to anybody. And, again, minimizing those mistakes and not counting on Kirk Cousins to have to win your football games right now. That's just the way this team is. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, how, Kevin Stefanski game plans these next 2 weeks, in particular this week, sort of 1 for 1. It does help. That you can run the football. I think you ask any coordinator, hey, great job, you guys scored 41 points. Well, when you run the football the way they did, that makes it pretty easy for an offensive coordinator. As Mark Trestman once told me, it's easy to call run plays, it's hard to call pass plays. And I always thought that was a good way to look at it. If your run game's going for 4, 5, 6, 7 yards a shot, man, let's dial another one up. Let's just call another run. Passing plays, you got protection issues, you got interception possibilities, you got all types of coverages going on, more variables in the passing game. So when you can run the football like that, that would be to me the key to the Vikings' success for the rest of the season. So
aside from Ryan Tannehill being not so good and really panicking on a lot of those third down blitzes, which a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL have trouble against those with the Vikings. But what is it that the Vikings defense did so well yesterday to sack the hell out of Ryan Tannehill? And they've been doing it for a while, so this isn't really new. But yesterday, it was about as dominating as a performance in the second half as you will ever see from any defense in 2018.
Well, maybe as we're sitting here, since you're the stats guy, you can look up the third downs in the game. It seemed like they were a lot of second longs, 3rd and 15s and 17s, and they were still trying to throw the ball and trying to work their ball down the field. So, in those situations, in particular at the end of the game, when the game was basically over, it was just a steamroll of sacks, it seems like, in the fourth quarter. And so, he's not a guy who's supposed to be a good athlete. He is injured. But, I only see Ryan Tannehill play so often. He is not a guy that runs around and makes things happen. You would think a guy played wide receiver for a couple years at Texas A&M, moved him to quarterback, supposed to be this good athlete, and, sort of doesn't seem to, make a lot of great things happen. Is not an explosive player, doesn't have sort of an explosive, quick throwing motion. Sort of methodical and almost a Chad Pennington-esque is probably the best way for me to look at it. And that's not very good versus a pass rush when you're behind by 14 or 21 points.
Chad Pennington, too good to be a journeyman quarterback?
Yes, he was mostly a starter in his career and actually had a nice little resurgence. One of the few times in AFC East in the last 2 decades that somebody besides the Patriots did not win the AFC East was a Chad Pennington coached Miami Dolphins team.
So to your question, in the second half, the Miami Dolphins' shortest third down was 3rd and 8, and they twice had 3rd and 27. So you're right about that Mike Zimmer could dial up just about anything, and the defensive line knows exactly what's coming when it's 3rd and 27. I do think that what they've done in terms of confusing quarterbacks on those third downs, Mackenzie Alexander gets another sack. Anthony Barr was rushing way more than he usually does yesterday, and that was a big deal. I would like to see Anthony Barr rush the passer all the time.
Yeah, they had him blitzing a lot. It seemed like a lot in the B gap, sometimes on the outside, but hitting it at the snap. They had him blitzing, I'd say, more than usual yesterday, and I like that too. He's a guy that I don't like him as much dropping into zone coverage and trying to be super disciplined, diagnosing things. He's just an athlete. Rush the quarterback and try to time out, use that athleticism in that way. And I liked that part of the game plan yesterday as well. One thing, part of that blitzing, I was thinking possibly also to try to stop the run a little bit more. Now, the Vikings do get pushed around a little bit up front, and they've got Richardson is a good player. I think he's a better pass rusher than he is run stopper. And they do seem to get sometimes pushed around a little bit. A lot of runs of 5, 6, 7 yards just right up the gut.
So tell me, before we wrap up here, what you saw last night and what is going on with the Rams. Because it makes things really interesting now. I mean, there is a scenario, I believe, playoff scenarios, especially when your team has a tie, can be a little confusing, but where the Vikings could end up having to go to Los Angeles instead of Chicago. Like, that could happen. And Jared Goff in his last 2 games has 1 touchdown and 7 picks or something like that. The offense for the Rams doesn't look anything like it looked early in the year. Is there something that you spot with that, or has it just been 2 good defenses giving them some problems?
Well, teams are stopping the run a little bit. Gurley he's not getting his 20, 25 carries a game. I believe he was in the 11, 12 range the last few weeks. That means more pressure on the quarterback. And, he threw it 54 times yesterday. I think it's 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions in the last 3 games. I mean, that's a huge issue. They still had a chance to win this football game. They're driving there at the end and had, threw the ball in the end zone a couple of times trying to, tie it up. So they're not a terrible team. Defensively, they do, teams seem to run on them more than I ever, thought they would. You were thinking that this is going to be a really, really good defense. They obviously got the 2 studs or 3 studs along the defensive line. The linebackers, I would say, are below average. They're more guys in space and more, cover guys, not great downhill run stoppers. Marcus Peters makes business decisions game after game. But they call it crack replace. It happened, I thought, 2 or 3 times in that game last night where a receiver is in tighter. They block a safety and they call it a crack replace. The receiver cracks the safety and the replace is actually the corner. The corner needs to step up and fill that void where the safety was supposed to be. And Marcus Peters likes to hang back 7, 8, 9 yards. That crack replace, the replace happens about 8 yards down the field, for a big gain. And so, there's a little softness along that Rams defensive front. A lot of talent, a lot of money on that defense, but they do not play a black and blue style of football. And you saw it in the Vikings game earlier this year. That was one of those high-scoring shootouts. The Rams don't do a very good job of stopping people, and they didn't stop the Eagles last night. And Mr. Nick Foles back in the action, playing great football, and maybe they make a run.
Foles just wins. Do you think Jared Goff's good? I mean, I saw people last night talking about how he's kind of like Kirk Cousins in a lot of ways, where he executes what McVay asks him to do, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, I don't think he's great. I think he's good. I think he's good on play action. He's got a quick release. He's a long, lanky guy. Doesn't throw a great ball. There's some, there's some balls that come out looking like Peyton Manning style. And he had a great throw last time, a post that was a complete wobbler, but was right on point. And he's not good in bad conditions. You saw that a couple weeks ago where he was terrible in bad conditions. And so he's a guy that plays well in domes, plays well in Southern California. That might be an issue, with them when they get deep in the playoffs, in particular if they ever, if they do have to go on the road, to somewhere like Chicago.
All right, Sage, great stuff, as always. If people aren't following you, by the way, on Twitter, they should be, and reading your articles for The Athletic, because if you read your article for The Athletic, especially what stuck out to me was Kirk Cousins under center, where he was very good, and you pointed that out. At Sage Rosenfels 18, they can see your tweets as well as your articles you post there as well. And on Wednesday, let's get to more Detroit Lions journeyman quarterbacks, of course, and also breaking down the tape of this one. When the coaches' film comes out, we can really get a good look at what succeeded for the Vikings offense and what they can carry over. So thank you as always, Sage.
Sounds great.
And thank you all for listening to the Purple Podcast.
Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
There are 10,000 wine grape varietals worldwide. Here's to thousands and thousands of gift possibilities.
Chardonnay paired with lobster mashed potatoes? Simply delicious.
I know just the right $10 bottle for your white elephant party. The most stolen gift award is yours guaranteed.
As you check off that gift list this holiday season, we'd love to share our always low prices and ridiculous selection at Total Wine & More. Cheers.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. This morning, the president tweets that Republicans have a chance working with Democrats to deliver great health care. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine says a federal judge shouldn't have declared Obamacare unconstitutional.
He could have taken a much more surgical approach and just struck down the individual mandate and kept the rest of the law intact. I believe that it will be overturned.
Senator Collins was on ABC's This Week. It won't quite be happy holidays for thousands of federal government workers if the government begins shutting down on Friday. They won't get a paycheck. Lawmakers of both parties are wrestling with the president over the $5 billion he wants to build a border wall. Presidential advisor Stephen Miller.
If it comes to it, absolutely. This is a very fundamental issue. At stake is the question of whether or not the United States remains a sovereign country, whether or not we can establish and enforce rules for entrance into our country.
I'm Rita Foley.